Good evening and welcome to the Marcellus Central School District Board of Education meeting for tonight, Monday, March 1st, 2021. At this time, I would ask that everyone please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda, presentations, COVID-19's impact on our school updates. Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. Hope all are well. It's good to see your faces. Just want to update you on the many things that are going on and give you a chance if you have questions or things that might help as we navigate this challenging time. You know, I certainly would appreciate it. So let me just see if we can, here we go. So first, an update on vaccinations. As you know, school district employees are part of Group 1B. And as a result of that designation, the vaccine is offered to everyone who wishes to have it. There's no requirement to be vaccinated. So there are folks certainly, just like probably people that you know, that are electing not to be vaccinated at this time. But we were able to do an internal survey so that we could ascertain which staff members maybe still were interested in getting the vaccine, but struggling to get appointments. I know if any of you tried to get appointments, it's tricky. There's lots of little secrets that you can use to try to get one, but it's still a tricky and somewhat arduous process. The county was kind enough to offer for us to send them some information about people that were struggling to get appointments. And it is my hope that they'll be able to assist those folks to get appointments and we can get them vaccinated. So hopefully we'll have positive news soon that we've cleared off the list. So as you know, there's been lots, I'll say, happening, at least in the way of articles and sometimes news coverage around the potential of returning to school 5 days a week. And I think it all started probably the Friday of February break during a press conference that the county executive was doing, where he made mention of that notion. And what ensued after certainly was a lot of people either getting their hopes up or becoming nervous. So probably both reactions. In addition, there was a lot of controversy sort of behind the scenes with who has the authority to make changes in social distance guidelines. And that's largely what's holding us back from having more students at school. And initially in the press conference, it appeared that at least the county executive felt that that was under his jurisdiction. We received some notification shortly thereafter that that was not the case. And you've seen probably the same articles I have recently now showing that it appears maybe it does rest back in the lap of the county, although I have not heard any official word on that. So we do have a meeting later this week and hopefully can clear that up because that, it's a little frustrating to not be sure who's making a decision. It makes advocacy a little bit challenging. So I did make a decision to send county officials that included Ryan McMahon and his deputy, Ann Rooney, and also Dr. Gupta, who's the person in charge of our health department. And I asked them to make sure that as they consider the change in social distance, that they make sure that they address not only classrooms, but also there's different social distance rules for physical education and music. And if those aren't considered, we'll be left with a lot of questions and a real problem in terms of running courses that we currently are running. In addition, if social distancing on buses is not addressed, that will be problematic because we won't even necessarily be able to get students to school or home from school in the first place. And then, as I mentioned before, another point that I wanted to make to them, there was a lot of talk, Cuomo came out with an executive order requiring that that we report which teachers have vaccines and which don't. That executive order was repealed, that will no longer be possible for the reporting to occur. And for me, I wanted to make sure they understood this isn't just about teachers. We have a lot of people that work at schools and have contact with kids and are around that we need to make sure are vaccinated so that we're creating safety for the adults in the building. So those were some of the things that I did address in that correspondence. So what's been happening throughout the course of the week? As you can imagine, I'm receiving a fair amount of communication. I would characterize probably the bulk of that communication as being in support of this notion and wanting it to happen yesterday. And then there are some folks that also, I would say maybe are not as favorable and have some concerns. I also set up a meeting with Dr. Shaw so that I could pick her brain a little bit. I know some of that information I shared with you in my weekly update, but I wanted to talk to her a little bit about her views about the whole social distance dilemma. Where did 6 feet come from? Where did 3 feet come from? And sort of get her take on that. And since then, I know that she was quoted in an article that came out this morning, I think sharing probably this, her and a colleague of hers, sharing similar information to what she shared with me. And in addition, we did hear a webinar last week. Actually, Jean Charlo viewed the webinar. I was tied up at the time, from another physician out in the Rochester area who shared that same information. And that was that 6 feet was arbitrary in the sense that they weren't sure what would happen with COVID. And the World Health Organization had a standard of 3 feet to protect yourself from droplets falling on you from someone else. And so they made the decision sort of to double that number to 6 feet, as an abundance of caution. So, I'm just sort of relaying that's a little bit of the research I've done. I know that there are school districts doing a variety of things, and some of them are having more students back than we are. In other places in the world, they're using, no social distance or 3 feet of social distance, probably variations of mask wearing. And I'm not sure that anyone's having any greater struggle than we are. And some of these things are what have sort of led me to believe that I think that we can reopen 5 days a week safely, as long as we double down on our efforts to do the things, the other things that we're doing. In addition, Yana reviewed a study with me that was done, and to sort of encapsulate the findings, it really talked about the fact that when school districts that are either fully open or hybrid have 4 to 6 mitigation measures in place, there's virtually no difference in any sort of transmission at school, first and foremost with younger students. So 4 to 6 mitigation efforts, students wearing masks is one, teachers wearing masks is another. So you can imagine it's pretty easy to get to 4, even if you eliminate the 6 foot social distance and reduce and increase building density, for example. So as far as that goes, with older children, there was an uptick in transmission, but the study went on to say that transmission is largely with older students happening outside of school in households. And that supports certainly what we've seen. I've seen COVID go through households, and not always all the way through the household. Sometimes everyone but one member of the household contracts COVID. And I can't figure out how that one individual got that lucky. But we're seeing all kinds of things. We are not seeing any spread at school, and have been fortunate to really not even have to do any contact tracing for a while, which I better knock on some wood because I might live to regret those words tomorrow. The other thing that I've been working on is I created a Q&A document. This is a strategy certainly that I used in the late summer to try to give any staff member that had a question or just needed to express something, they had a vehicle to do so. And I spent a fair amount of time answering or responding to the questions and comments. And that's been ongoing for the past few days. Actually, yeah, since late last week, because I know I spent some time yesterday answering questions and a little bit more time today. Jean was instrumental in encapsulating the thoughts of our administrative team and put those into a survey that we will be launching in the morning. And that will request information from families that will be pretty important for any planning efforts. And the topics dealt with on that survey largely have to do with are people able to maintain the mode of transportation that they're currently using. So for example, if Janine is transporting her children to school 2 days a week and we go back 5 days a week, can Janine sustain transporting for 5 days a week, or is her situation changing? Just so that we have a good read, because right now we're in pretty good shape with busing, even when we put both cohorts back together. So we're just trying to get a read on that part of it. In addition, we recognize that there will be a potential desire for transfer of students from one model to another. So if we have the opportunity to go to 5 days a week, obviously that means we maintain a virtual option, because that's still something that we're expected to do and happy to do. Or we have the 5 day a week option, but the hybrid option will have to go away at that point. And so we're certain that we may have some people that are uncomfortable and would prefer for their children to be virtual. As I've said many times, our secondary schedule is extremely fragile. So we're hoping that there's not a ton of movement, because we're already sort of struggling as it is to make this work. But that being said, we do want to know if people have, concerns and want their children to be fully virtual rather than 5 days a week. But there may also be some movement in the other direction. I don't anticipate that being a huge factor, simply because I think folks that have chosen for their children to be fully virtual have particular circumstances. And in many cases, those circumstances likely have not changed, at this point. So we do need that information to help us plan. I've also reached out to the county to see if we can get a regular slot in the schedule. With everything going on, resources going more to vaccination and worrying more about vaccination, I don't want to forget about our opportunity to run testing here. And quite frankly, we have a great little testing team set up. We've been testing athletes, and it's usually been Jean and myself and Mike Free and Amanda. We're the base testing team for doing all our athlete testing, and we're pretty confident that we have a good career path if this doesn't work out for us as testers. We're really efficient at it. And so I think we can handle, the county's made no bones about the fact they don't have a lot of resources to put to this initiative and helping schools, but they will help us certainly with providing the tests. So we think we can continue with testing with that team that we've developed. As you can imagine, I've been pestering the administrative team, getting lots of meetings with them. We've included 3 of our directors that we have some logistical things we really need to work on with them. And that's Ryan, our director of facilities, Ryan Riefler, our school cafeteria director, which is Donna Rice, and our transportation director, Susan Stearns. So they've been working with us. We've met several times trying to address drop off, pick up. Lunch is a whole ball of wax, where, how, who, but we don't know. We do know why, because they need to eat. We also have some scheduling issues, and the scheduling issues, as you can imagine, largely sit at the upper levels. And honestly, it's because we made some decisions to make kids have the ability to access courses that they normally would have been blocked out of. And we had to get real creative to do that. And those really creative things are not going to mesh well in a 5-day-a-week plan, but we're on a mission to fix it, and we'll figure it out. And then, of course, furniture and, the physical logistics of all of this stuff. So as I said, we met several times last week, and we will likely be doing the same this week, starting with our first meeting tomorrow. Before I get into just a little update on athletics, and I did ask Mike to come on the Zoom call with us. I've said to the people that I've spoken to or responded to an email, which I've done both, that as a human being, but also as a school leader of a public school district, I believe in finding a way to bring students back to school. That's sort of my mission, and it's where I'm headed. So I say to you, our wonderful board members, if there's something that you need, I'm looking for either your support or you're telling me that I'm crazy, because this is the direction I've been going in. I've been in this direction all the way along. I think it's probably been pretty obvious in the discussions that we've had, but it's also based on the fact that we've done an amazing job of keeping people safe and keeping school open. And I'm super confident that we can continue to do it. I think we have the right people on the bus, so to speak. We have some great community partners, and, I'm committed to figuring this out. So if you have questions or thoughts, I would love if you could unmute yourself and share away.
Michelle, I have a question in regards to the timing. Do you, I know we don't know definitely if this is going to happen or possibly happen, but do you have any idea of when a decision may or may not be made?
Well, I think you can all tell that the rumor mill was saying there was going to be a decision last week. And I got to that fateful Sunday night and I thought, what do I do? People are already asking me based on the Friday press conference. I've got to say something. I know it's going to be painful. I know it's going to create a stir, but they need to hear something from me, even if they aren't happy with what they hear. And so I sort of had to go out on that Sunday night limb, and I've been trying to wrap my arms around it ever since. Do I think there'll be an announcement of something this week? I don't know. I guess I feel like something is fairly imminent, and I just want us to be prepared. So a timeline, one could say that spring break poses, maybe an interesting opportunity to start a transition. It gives us, a couple more weeks to really dig into planning. Let's say a decision doesn't come until the end of this week or next week. And please, I have no idea if and when one is coming. I can't overstate that enough. So it could provide an interesting spot for us. We will probably need a week in between K6 and 712, just for the purposes of logistics. It's a lot to have happen at once. Obviously, the little ones are suffering in a different way from not being in school. I don't want to say they're suffering more. They're suffering in a different way, just because virtual options are just not generally as successful for the little ones. So it makes sense. And obviously the risk around COVID is so much lower in the very young. I mean, I think we've seen that research all day long. So that's probably like the best big picture timeline I can give you. My goal is that once a decision is made, I will map a timeline out, working with the administrative team that we feel like we can meet. make sure I get that out as quickly as possible, because people I know will be clamoring immediately to know.
Thank you.
Michelle, I just wanted to add to, I think that from my perspective, being on the board and then also working in a school, that, this has gone, so much better than I think we had anticipated. It certainly hasn't been perfect, but I remember in August thinking, how are we going to do this? How are we going to keep these kids safe? How are we going to get kindergartners to keep their masks on? And when it comes to social distance, do our little ones even understand that? And I think that our children and our students have done remarkably well. And I think that it speaks to, and the fact that it's not transmitting in the schools really, makes sense. When it comes to schools, we're all about protocols, and we're all about, setting things up and having large numbers of people in place and keeping everybody safe. So, I think that I certainly support bringing kids back, 5 days a week as soon as we can. I think that it's always a risk benefit conversation. And certainly the risk of COVID is very, very real, but also the mental health concerns of having our kids only in the building 2 days a week. And then of course the academic and the social emotional. So, I think we are certainly moving in the right direction. The vaccines getting rolled out, what we've learned about COVID. And, the big piece, of course, is, moving from the social distancing rules of 6 feet to 3 feet is a huge factor. But, I feel really good about moving forward with, is having kids in the building as much as we can, as many days as we can.
Any other questions before Michelle moves on?
I just wanted to make one comment. I think, will there, I was surprised in talking to other moms of upperclassmen that I thought when, this buzz started about going back 5 days a week, everybody would be thrilled. And I think some of the upperclassmen may feel like they've adjusted their lives to this current schedule, their sleep schedule, their work schedules, their everything. So upon returning back to, a 5 day a week program, I think there's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way. Cause I think sadly, some kids are comfortable right now in this model. So the comment that I've heard a couple kids make, including my own, is, now if they remain on these block schedules, they're in each class for 80 minutes and they've never had anything like that before. So have we been able to give support to, I know that the teachers have been doing it on 2 days a week, but what type of support is there for both, for the teachers and students transitioning to an everyday 80 block model? I would think that's going to present some challenges.
I think just the change in general, because Janine, I echo that surprise. I haven't heard a ton of that opinion, but hearing it at all, I think for so long people have just said, please, my child wants to be in school and they can't wait to be back with their friends. Hearing any of that sentiment it took me back a little bit, but I understand it completely. And it's the reason that there are people all over the United States and New York State and the world choosing virtual schooling options for their children, because it does afford a different lifestyle, and people, it might fit their lifestyle, or, they start doing it and their lifestyle then fits nicely around it. So I'm really not surprised. And in some ways, I think while there's a lot our upperclassmen have missed out on, they've really gotten a taste of the freedom and the responsibility when you have to take a little bit more ownership. And that's a skill that colleges usually have to really whip them into shape on when they get there. And I mean, I heard that from Cornell professors years ago. And when you think about the students that we're sending to Cornell, that was a little bit of a hard pill to swallow when you're telling me they're not self-starters and they can't manage their time. You know, you're talking about our valedictorians, for God's sake. So it is an interesting dynamic. So my initial plan is, at least in the short term and maybe in the longer term, that we do preserve some extra time, maybe on Wednesday mornings, because the staff really needs some time. A lot of them have done significant planning for the rest of the year, because I don't, you know, like Christine said, I myself, and I'm a pretty optimistic person, I've been shocked over and over again at what we've pulled off. You know, like, I go into this with confidence. I feel like we have a good plan, but I think, you know, at some point this probably isn't going to work and we'll figure it out. But we have time and again, I mean, who would have dreamed that we would be playing basketball and wrestling and doing it safely, because we've been okay so far. I mean, you could not have convinced me of that. So I do believe that in order, you know, it's often said, you know, when you're on the airplane, you've got to put your own mask on first. I think we've all heard that over and over. I think an important key is that we are going to have to still carve out a little time, even if it's run a 1-hour delay schedule once a week or something, because we really are going to have to put the oxygen mask on our staff first so that they can feed the students. I think I've had an interesting question about, especially at the secondary level, because if you took a course the first half of the year and now somebody else is taking it the second half of the year, and next year you're all going to be mixed together in the next course, there's going to be a disparity with how far teachers will be able to take different groups of students. I honestly think that poses an awesome opportunity, because I think we have to recognize that trauma is trauma, and this experience has been traumatic. And you know, you've seen those things on Facebook, like, listen, our parents went to war, you know, they went to Vietnam, and we're asking you to stay home and sit on your couch. But it's been an unsettling experience for a lot of people. And unfortunately, the body's response to trauma doesn't necessarily classify whether you're going to be eaten by a tiger or, you know, you're stressed out about something. Stress is stress. So I think it does give us a unique opportunity to take some time within those blocks to do things that will hopefully heal, inspire, you know, and maybe we'll have the space to do that. So I appreciate you thinking about that, Janine, because it's something that's sort of weighing on my mind as well.
Just jumping on that too, Michelle, I know that I was just doing some reading, and there are some districts, I believe, that are contemplating going to 4 days a week and keeping one day, at least in the beginning, for deep cleaning, for, you know, problem solving as we, you know, because you're really doubling the capacity of your building. You know, so I did read that recently, that there are some districts, not necessarily for the long term, but just maybe for the first few weeks. And I thought that I could see the value in that.
That's interesting. I'll do a little inquiring on my Wednesday meeting with the soups in the region. It's one of the reasons we've had Ryan at the table right from the beginning, and of course Tony, so that if they're feeling like we can keep up with things, you know, I want to make sure that I hear from them, you know, on that. But thank you very much for sharing that perspective. Okay, so I know Mike is on with us in case anybody has specific questions. I just wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to ask someone who has his finger on the pulse. And, you know, Mike has been very overjoyed and enthusiastic to get students participating in athletics, and has really done an outstanding job of coming up with all the logistics necessary to pull this off. So as you probably imagine, we're more than halfway through this little mini winter season. It's been very successful. There's lots of happy kids and happy coaches. We've been testing weekly. As I said, today was the first day we did modified, but we have JV and varsity testing again on Wednesday. It's gone extremely smoothly. Mike put together a great schedule, he's been commandeering the kits and making sure that all the supplies are ready for when Jean and I flit in there with our mad testing skills to help out. So he and Amanda have done a great job with that. Modified, Mike, maybe you can chime in. I think modified started Friday, but Mike, can you clarify that?
I can. Our modified winter sports actually started last Monday,
Okay.
and that's why we put it off till today to do the first round of testing so that we could get all the COVID forms signed and returned back to us for parents to allow us to test and to get the it's called the informed consent about COVID form that we had to get back from their parents. Everything is going extremely well. I think this Wednesday, I don't have an exact number. I know we're close to 370 or 380 tests as of Wednesday. And we haven't done those yet, but every single test that we have done, including the ones that we finished today, were all negative, which is awesome. Kids
So the
are,
way, oh, sorry.
yeah,
Mike.
sorry. No, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
So the way this works is that we test the athletes on a specific schedule, every week. So Wednesday is JV and varsity, Monday's modified. And then at the games, Mike and Amanda commandeer testing the officials and anybody that's there working in the various jobs. And they're tested once a week. So unless they come with a form from another school district. So imagine this, an official has a game Monday night in, Jordan Elbridge, and then they come here and do a game Tuesday. If they were tested on Monday, we don't need to test them again. It's a weekly cycle. So we created a system among the schools. We have held firm on not having spectators home or away. We did, as I told you before, offer to our senior parents to work some of the jobs that we needed to have done so that they could at least be on a rotation and see some of the games. And they have been a wonderful help and very appreciative of that opportunity. So I think it was a win-win. They were jobs we needed to have done anyway. They have to undergo the same testing that the kids do and the coaches and that Mike does. So that's worked out really well. We have certainly faced some pressure from some other school districts that weren't too thrilled with our decision, but I just felt until we knew more about this particular situation, it was best not to introduce lots of outsiders, to sort of keep our kids safe. The kids are used to being around each other. The coaches are used to being around each other. It's, introducing people that they aren't used to being around that I felt like was something we could control. And, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, but I would like to think that it was a good step to take. So I don't know if you remember back in the fall, there were certain sports that we weren't running. They were deemed as not acceptable to happen during our regular fall season. And two of those sports are volleyball and football. So one of the things that happened was that our region, the OHSL, created this fall 2, which is set to start up soon. Mike, can you take us through fall 2 and spring so that people understand the dates and what sports we're hoping to see happen?
Absolutely. And just so you know, too, all of the dates for the start dates for all of our seasons are both on the athletics website, on the school district website, and on our Schedule Galaxy. So fall 2 is set to start on Monday the 15th. The high-risk sports that are playing in fall 2 are girls volleyball and football. The season is a little bit truncated, but one thing that we're doing in there as well is we are also going to run our indoor track season, which got canceled for the winter season. And there were enough schools in the OHSL that decided to jump on board, and we're going to run indoor track outdoors during this fall 2 season. And we'll do exactly what we would normally have done with indoor track, in the winter season. So as long as the weather's decent and it's not inclement weather, we're going to run outside. We have, I think we set up 4 dual meet, we're calling them the track meets, but they're dual meets. So the way that it won't look like outdoor track, because we're not allowed to run the same sport twice in a year. So we have to run all the indoor standards outdoors. So it'll be the 55-meter sprint race. It'll be the 55-meter hurdles, the 300 instead of a 200, and all the indoor events is what we will run outdoors in the dual meets. And we've scheduled them right now to start at the end of March and through early April to try and catch the better part of the weather for those. So that fall 2 season for us, we are going, it will all end on with a football game on Saturday, April 17th, because then the varsity and JV spring season will start on Monday, April 19th. And we did not want to put students in a situation where they were forced to make choices between sports or trying to play 2 sports simultaneously. Now, we are also planning on having a fall 2 season for our modifieds. Our fall 2 season for modifieds is not going to start until the Monday after April break. So that's when we would run a modified volleyball and a modified football for a shortened, about a 4.5, 5 week season. And that 4.5, 5 week season is about the typical amount of time that we would have run volleyball, but it'll be definitely a shortened season for the modified football. And then we'll run our spring modifieds starting on Monday, May 10th. And we'll run those through the 12th of June. And they will end up with, it's a smaller season for all these sports, but we divided them equally in our OHSL so that we could have schedules and run those sports all the way through the spring.
Mike, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Obviously volleyball, that'll be fine, but with the weather and football, I mean, fortunately our turf is not as big a concern as normal because we're getting rid of it soon. So, well, what happens if we're still under snow?
So Ryan and Tony, they've purchased a piece of a beautiful tractor and a nice, I think it's a 6 foot wide or a 4 foot wide snowblower attachment for that tractor that can be run on the turf. Ryan has already blown the snow off the turf so that it's about 1 inch right now. He's going to make sure that with the weather we've been having, the weather has been melting the snow down. So he's pretty confident that both the track and the turf will be clear by Monday, March 15th.
If only today had cooperated, we would be really there.
Yeah, we'll be fine. Like tomorrow and the next day, the temperature are supposed to be back up into the upper 30s to low 40s. And with that sun being as high as it is now in March, it'll clear that off quickly. That's my confidence in it. I'm hoping.
So Mike, just to confirm, none of these seasons will overlap, correct?
Correct. The only overlap that we will have will be with the modified and some of the JV varsity. So I've got to do a little bit of logistics, like with modified football playing through March. Oh my gosh, I'm getting my dates mixed up. I'm sorry. So with modified football playing through the first week of May, there will be a 3-week overlap, but I've already talked with all the coaches because the modified will practice not on the turf so that they're not disrupting JV and varsity lacrosse that didn't get a season last year. They'll be up on the concession stand field, and they will just move from the north end to the south end of the field when the throwers for outdoor track are throwing discus and shot put. So we've got the logistics all worked out, and I think it'll be fine with that. But there will be no overlaps for the kids from season to season, so they would never be forced.
I was thinking more in terms of participation from one
Correct.
season to the other.
Yep, and that's what I was finishing up with. There will be no overlap with any sport for any participants from one season to the next, so they will not have to make a choice.
We have had some questions come up about weight room, getting back to strength and conditioning work, and also some of our extracurriculars. And we are sort of trying really hard to keep all these balls in the air and figure out little by little, as we open. So it's not that we don't want to see more things open. We're just trying to take whatever presents itself first. So hopefully, once we get the rest of these plans underway for the sports coming up, we can figure out ways to handle adding some of these other activities. So we'll keep you posted as time goes on. I know that the staff involved with a lot of these things are really wanting to dig back in. I know Mike Weiscott and our strength and conditioning person, and then also folks that do intramurals, they have ideas and would like to get things going. It's been, I'm not trying to make excuses, but it's been an incredibly heavy lift just to sort of get launched what we've gotten launched. And I think we have a fair amount of confidence that we've done it safely and can maybe start proceeding in some of these other areas as well. So hopefully that helps some of you that have questions about that. Anything else about athletics?
Move on to budget update.
Yeah. I'll save Tony getting up. So just a quick, so that you don't forget, we're working on the budget here. We really don't have much of an update. As you know, there's still a waiting game out there on the federal stimulus and also state aid for that matter. We're still holding in the same position we were in, but just didn't want you to think we had some big update and we didn't share it. So we just wanted to let you know.
The governor is preoccupied.
Definitely.
All right. Any questions in regards to budget planning from the board? Item number 4 on the agenda, recognition.
Just a few recognitions. I encourage you to check out Margaret Middleton is our KCH librarian. I'm sure many of you know her. She is really doing some incredible work with our students down there. And she has things posted to our website. Students are doing research and creating digital books and then recording themselves reading the books, which is just beautiful and precious. And I encourage you to check out that site and just see what our kids are up to. So there's lots of great things happening all over the place, but at the KCH library as well. I also wanted to just give recognition to the hard work of our administrative team. And then 3 of our directors, Susan, Ryan, and Donna, as I mentioned before, they've been fantastic partners, ready to help in any way that we need them as we contemplate this possibility of return to school 5 days a week. And again, I'm going to add our union leaders into that. I think if you watch the news, you could really form an interesting opinion of unions right now, because there's so much controversy out there about the roles that unions are playing in keeping some of these large school districts closed. Our union leaders have been our partners from the beginning. They've challenged us. They've worked side by side with us. They've been good advocates for their members, but they've also really been great supporters of the work that we're trying to do for kids. And, I was talking to somebody today that made a comment that, this may all come down to teachers unions blocking, or unions in general blocking schools reopening. And I said, geez, not in Marcellus. You may be seeing that in the media, but that's not what's going on here. And these jobs of union leadership are completely unsung jobs. No one is reaping much of a benefit, but more of a headache. And so I really appreciate their partnership. And I just wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you. Item number 5, resident comments. Mr. Snatcher, are there any comments?
No more comments.
No comments. Item number 6, business. 6.1, acceptance of proposal for external auditing services. Resolved that the Board of, resolved that the Board of Education accepts the proposal from Grossman St. Amour CPAs, PLLC, for external auditing services. May I have a motion?
Motion, Janine.
Second,
Second, Patty.
any questions or comments in regards to this proposal? All those in favor, please state your name when voting.
Patty, I.
Janine, I.
Kelly, I.
Christine, I.
Michael, aye. Opposed? Carried. Is he off, Mike?
I don't see him.
Item 7, personnel. Resolved that the following personnel items be approved. You can see items 7.1 through 7.7 on the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Yeah, this is Patty.
Patty,
Second,
Second.
Christine.
Christine. Any questions or comments in regards to personnel? All those in favor?
Patty, I.
Janine, I.
Kelly, I.
Christine, I.
Michael, aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 8, consent agenda. Resolved that the consent agenda consisting of the following items be approved. Items 8.1 through 8.5. May I have a motion?
A motion, Janine.
Janine, second.
Second, Kelly.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Patty, I.
Janine, I.
Kelly, I.
Christine, I.
Michael, aye. Opposed? Carried. Oh. Item 9, information items. Board meeting format status.
Again, we had decided to remain virtual through March when we had this discussion. And I've said every time, if you want to change that, we certainly can at any time. My feeling, if you're looking for it, might be we could return in person for that March 15th meeting. I'm going to plan to set up over in the LGI. I'm going to plan to have the principals there either way, the administrative team, in the event that there's things that they could offer to any information we'd have to give relative to our COVID discussion. So I don't know how you feel about it. I'm going to prepare for that either way.
Board, what are your thoughts?
I like that idea.
I do too.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Same.
Mike? Mike?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay. All right, so then we will plan on our March 15th, is it? March 15th meeting to be in person at the LGI at the high school. Item 10, resident comments. Any other?
Nope.
No resident comments at this time. 11.1, enter executive session. Resolved that the meeting in public be adjourned and the executive session be convened for the purpose of discussion of collective negotiations. May I have a motion?
Motion, Kelly.
What was that?
Patty
Patty?
and I don't,
Kelly.
Second. Kelly? Time is 7:49. All those in favor?
Patty, I.
Janine, I.
Kelly, I.
Christine, I.
Michael, I.
Mike, aye.
Opposed?